everybody, Ali Akbarian, your resident road safety expert from Mobility Engineering, back again for another Q&A question. Thank you very much for sending us in your questions. We love getting them, and please send us more. And as I always say, please hit the button that looks a little bit like this pillow somewhere down there. We'd love to have you on board as a subscriber. We'd love to have the support to get to 1,000 subscribers, so please hit that button. We're going to give you more and more information as the time goes on, and great information as well. So give us feedback on the information as well. We'd love to know what other questions you'd like answered. So today's question comes from yet another OT. Thank you, the OTs. A big shout out to all the OTs out there. Talking about a client that is being transported in a wheelchair converted vehicle. So the vehicle is a wheelchair vehicle, and the wheelchair vehicle does not have tie downs. The wheelchair vehicle has tie downs, but his wheelchair does not have tie down points. And she basically, this OT is asking, is that legal or is it not? And if it is legal, how do we secure this person's wheelchair into the vehicle if there is no specific tie-down points? And then she's also asked about what sort of seatbelt do you use, and do you use the seatbelt in the wheelchair and so on. So I thought I would run a little bit of a video to clarify the ins and outs of that, because we do get quite a lot of questions around wheelchair tie-downs and crash-tested wheelchairs and all that kind of thing. And she's also actually asked about, does it have to be crash-tested? So first of all, I'd like to give a big shout out to Sunrise Medical for providing us with this wheelchair as a sample wheelchair for our Q&A videos. Sunrise Medical is one of our partners in terms of the wheelchair products. So big shout out and thank you very much, because this wheelchair is perfect for the demonstration that we want to do today. The first question, which before I start talking about the wheelchair, is does it have to be crash tested, does it have to be crash tested legally? So first of all, the legal requirements are that it does not have to be crash tested. However, it is highly recommended that it is. So there is an Australian standard that specifies you have to crash test your wheelchairs. But the little kind of catch is that Australian standard has not been adopted into legislation and has not been ever adopted into legislation. So what it means is technically you do not have to have a crash tested wheelchair, but it also depends on the state, by the way. This is federal regulation. Some states, for example, I'm aware of Queensland, has got a lot of tighter regulations around crash-tested wheelchairs and lap-sash seatbelts and things like that. So this information I'm giving you is generic, but you should always double-check with your local state authority if you're unsure. But if you follow these guidelines, you will generally be okay. Alright, so in terms of crash-tested, highly recommend that it should be. And generally you'll find that if you've got wheelchair tie-down points, then it should be or will be crash tested. So, and actually before I start getting right into the wheelchair, another thing I'm going to show you, and I'm going to put a link below, is there's actually a few guidelines, one from the ILC and one from Enable New South Wales, which gives you all the different hints and tips and how to secure your wheelchair and what you need to look for in terms of tie downs, and if you don't have tie downs, what you should do. I'm going to put a link to those, because those guides are really great guides for following. So if I'll get you to just come a little bit closer here, and I'll show you what we're talking about with wheelchair tie downs. So if you look down here, what we've got here are these little hook points, or little metal brackets down at the bottom there, one on either side. And then if I go to the front of the wheelchair, I've also got the same thing over here. So I've got one there and one on the other side as well. So the floor restraints on the car come out and they hook onto these, and then we tighten them. So that's how this thing secures into the vehicle. So what do you do if you don't have one of these restraints, or don't have a restraint point? And I actually have a wheelchair without one, and a bit of an old school wheelchair that I can show you of what we can do. So if we don't have them, once again, we do not recommend this. We recommend, if you do not have one, if you don't have tie downs, that you replace your wheelchair with one that does have tie downs, because I will make it very clear, this is not a super safe option. This is basically, she'll be right with what you've got type thing. So I want to make that very clear. I don't really endorse this, but I do understand that out in the public this does happen. So as a passion for safety, we want to show people what's the best practice, even in this case. So again, what I'll do is I'll show you a close-up of the wheelchair. What you've got is you've got big metal components like this, and then you've got things like the moving parts and the chair, which is flappy, like that. So the big metal components, which is this part, that's the frame of the wheelchair, and that's what we want to hook onto when we're hooking on. We don't want to hook onto the wheels because they move, and we don't want to hook onto handles because they also move, and we don't want to hook onto any kind of fabric. Only onto the structural main frame of the wheelchair. So in this case, I'd be putting on the hook around there, And also if I turn it around the front, I'd be doing the same thing around the front frame, either around there, if I can fit it around there, or a little bit higher. And that's basically how we'd be putting it on. Once again, as I said, this structural part here, that's the frame. This part is not a frame, this is just a thing that comes out as a side handle, and many manual wheelchairs and wheelchairs like this operate in this manner. So yeah, that's basically how we would secure it to the frame. And yeah, if you have to, you have to. As I said, we do not recommend it, and it is highly recommended that you replace your wheelchair with one that does have tie-down points. As you can see, something like this one by Sunrise Medical, which I'll bring back, does have the tie-down points, and it's a great little product and very simple kind of wheelchair as well. This one has got a whole bunch of other options as well, but even the simple wheelchairs have the tie-downs. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the seatbelt and securing. And again, this Sunrise Medical wheelchair has got a perfect setup for it. So what we have here is inside the wheelchair, we have a strap that secures you in place, right? Like so. And I'll put it on in a minute and I'll show you how it looks. And this is a huge, huge misconception that we found in the industry. A lot of people think that if I use this strap that's built into the wheelchair, that this is going to be the same as my seatbelt. But this is not the same as our seatbelt. This is just a strap that secures you to the wheelchair. This by no means is classified as a seatbelt and can be basically used as a seatbelt. It is very not unsafe to be used as a seatbelt. You can use this to secure you into the wheelchair, but you also need to use a vehicle seatbelt that will either come across your shoulder or across your lap. Once again, we highly recommend that you do need to use the ones that come across your shoulder, right? So seatbelts that are legally accepted seatbelts are connected to the vehicle body or vehicle floor or vehicle structure. They're not connected to the wheelchair. We've basically never seen seatbelts that are built into wheelchairs, and from our research and from what we've seen, they're not really strong enough to hold a seatbelt. So a seatbelt needs to hold a load of something about 3,000 or 4,000 kilos, because in the event of an accident, the weight is increased and someone who's up to 100 kilos can significantly put pressure on that. Wheelchairs can't handle that kind of load. They're already quite heavy and they're already under a lot of pressure. So this is not a seatbelt. This is a strap that holds you to the wheelchair, and you still need to use that seatbelt in addition to this device here, right? That is very important, and if you're not using that, you're actually breaking the law, because the law requires that you wear a seatbelt, and this is not classified as that seatbelt. All right, so hopefully that helps, and thank you very much for sending in your question, and hopefully that helps with your question. As I always say, please send us more questions, and I've got my wonderful pillow, and as we said, hit that button that looks a little bit like this down there, get on board with the subscription, and get on board to our channel. More and more content coming to you every day. Thanks very much, and see you next time.